Today I might be reviewing A Fever You Can't Sweat Out by Panic at the Disco, but if you want to see me recreate the album cover along with a number of other famous album covers, then tap the card up in the corner or else the link at the end of the video. What's up everyone, John from ARTV. It's time for a review of the 2005 debut album A Fever You Can't Sweat Out by Panic at the Disco. This is a throwback and also redemption review that's been heavily requested. I initially reviewed this album back in 2013, but I honestly don't feel I did it justice in my explanations and the review process in general, so today I'll be honing in, focusing my thoughts, and actually giving a proper review to this debut. This was recorded in 2005, just 1 month after all the members graduated high school, only being 18 years old, getting a recording contract to Pete Wentz of Fall Out Boy's record label. This was a huge time for a young band. And they came through with something very, very different and unique, both lyrically and musically. A Fever You Can't Sweat Out has a very unique sound to it. It fuses together baroque pop, indie, pop punk, different traces and veins and styles of rock music, and puts it all into one 13-song album. And when you throw these ingredients into a blender, it shouldn't come out the way that it does, because you've got tales of alcoholism, you have struggles mentally, talks of prostitution, and other books that are referenced by Chuck Palahniuk. Just weird stuff for 18-year-olds to take on, mixing that together with everything from auto-tune to the baroque instrumentation, and also more electronics fused together with pop punk. It sounds like an utter mess, but rest assured, it's not. For as upbeat sounding and as sunny of a disposition as A Fever You Can't Sweat Out puts off as a whole, it's actually kind of odd how dark and deep some of these songs go. It starts relatively light with something like London Beckoned songs about money written by machines, which is of course a mouthful, but is also about their newfound fame and just record labels trying to kind of interfere and taking on their sound, telling them to go one way when they want to go another. And it's amazing how it comes through with such a fast pacing and works so well. And then you have something like Nails for Breakfast, Tacks for Snacks, which at surface level, you might never understand what it's about. But once you actually peel back the layers, listen to interviews, and even hear Brendon Urie talk about it in recent years, you can hear him open up about how it was actually about Ryan Ross, a founding member of this band, and his father's struggles with alcoholism. The underlying glue that holds this record together, like cement and nails, among other things, would keep a house sturdy. It's of course Brendon Urie, who was kind of a secret weapon at the time, as not that many people saw him as a vocalist. In fact, Ryan Ross was originally going to sing for this band, and that came to fruition later on their second album, Pretty Odd. But on the first record, sure, Brendon Urie was an ace in the hole, and he really owned so many of these tracks and gave a personality, a charm, and a feeling of yesterday. Back to the 1900s is where that beckoned. But of course, it wasn't just that. It was the instrumentation and the music that really made people come back to this record, checking them out and saying, wow, this sounds like something special and unique. More than a decade later, it's really interesting and awesome to see how these songs have taken on a life of their own. It's something where you do have just the surface level tracks that you can listen to, like I Write Sins Not Tragedies, and sure, it's fun, it's nostalgic, but you also have many other cuts that really offer us something more, and I do feel like that's what's kept people coming back. And it's something that a lot of people dismiss just because they're like, oh, it's emo, oh, it's pop punk, it's dated. But if you actually take the time to dig in, then you're going to see why this record's had the longevity and why it actually went 2 times platinum, selling over 2 million pure copies in the US. As far as breaking down the track list goes, we've got songs that really fall on 2 sides of the fence, separated by intermission. We open things up, obviously, with Introduction that flows perfectly into the only difference between Martyrdom and Suicide is press coverage, which is absolutely one of the best songs on this record. So much fun, but also twisted fun at that. But we have a separating factor that divides these songs up. The first 7 tracks here, all the way up to Lying Is the Most Fun, is actually something that really dabbles more in pop punk, fusing in electronics and also spry synthesizers, and some quirky moments that add in auto-tune on Yuri's voice, and also fusing together these live instruments like drums and guitars, and nice bass lines and surprisingly fun guitars, and lead ones I should say, together with these synth leads, and the parts just actually fit together nicely. But in the second half of this record, after intermission, going into But It's Better If You Do, this is something where I start to see a drastic turn. Not something that really divides the record saying you're either gonna love one side of the track list or the other, but more so in the sense that, oh, they're really grounded in more rich and original and organic instrumentation on this latter half. At only 39 minutes in length, it's amazing to see what Panic at the Disco are able to do, both lyrically and musically, and how fast-paced the record seems to feel. Especially in its early stages, you hear these fast-paced songs that barely pass 3 minutes in length, and it's all going down so smoothly that you have no problems. It's smooth sailing all throughout. We start off with a track that I obviously love right after introduction. I already talked about The Only Difference, but from there we go into London Beckoned, songs about money, and this is such a fantastic moment, and I love how fast-paced Yuri is able to come across here, and it's a shame that this song and others like it on this record don't still get played live, just because of how truly fascinating they are and how rich musically. It might not be the best production ever. You can maybe blame Matt Squire for that. He's kind of hit and miss, although I've liked some of the stuff that he's done with The Used in the past. Here, maybe there's traces and places where I feel like it's not as strong, but I honestly don't feel like it's a huge contributing factor for why maybe somebody wouldn't like this album. As you continue listening to the album, these majestic songs continue to roll out, ones that might hit you for the first time in years if you've just dusted off this record and you're starting to play it again. I do feel like moments like I Constantly Thank God for Estaban are going to grab you. This is something that takes a stab at religion, and more specifically I would say hypocrites, and it is such a fun takedown to listen to. Then you have moments that guitarist and writer, primary songwriter I should say at this point, Ryan Ross wrote about his alcoholic father. It starts off with nails for breakfast, tacks for snacks, and this one really just says it all in the chorus. It prescribed pills to offset the shakes, and it's something where you take another pill for this, another pill for that, and he sees his father and he's angry about it, and it gets even angrier on the next track, Camisado. This is something that means basically in military terms, surprise attack. And it's something where I feel like Ross truly vents his feelings towards his father and the way that his dad treated him as he started getting famous, and of course his life decisions in general. The vaudeville and big band swing to "There's a Good Reason These Tables Are Numbered, Honey, You Just Haven't Thought of It Yet" is truly incredible. I love just snapping my fingers, tapping along to this one. "I'm the new cancer, never look better, you can't stand it." And then you have something like the creeping, sinister and sly "Lying is the most fun a girl can have without taking her clothes off," which is of course a reference to the Natalie Portman film. It's something that inspired the band, but not just that. I think that vaudeville, of course, was one thing, but also film, cinematography, and the writing of Chuck Palahniuk was a huge influence on Fever. And that's something that, looking back, is actually pretty damn cool. I mean, what 18-year-olds think this deeply and have this many things to say? Finally, we fade out on the twinkling dazzle of Build God, Then We'll Talk, which talks about prostitution, hypocrisy, among other things, and honestly, I'm just fascinated by Yuri's vocal performance on this one. Everything from the tra-la-la-las and then the up and down scales, how he stretches the voice and sounds good. I honestly can understand why some people would critique his voice during these early years, but he was coming into his own and was much better than many of his contemporaries at the time. I fully admit my bias towards this record. It's something that anybody covering any album is going to have some bias, whether you admit it or not, and I fully admit it. But here, I do feel like maybe it's a little bit thicker than normal just because I have such a strong bond with the album. I had just started getting into music in 2005, and this came out in September of that year, and I fell in love with it. It's one of the first records that I ever bought with my own money, and I was so proud, and I just bought it, and I listened to it over and over and over again. It's a special record that I am attached to, but it's a very, very solid one that is rich and unique musically, but also has something to offer in terms of the lyrics that still hold up to this day. Anyways, overall, for A Fever You Can't Sweat Out, this is a great record. Obviously one of my favorites. It's probably up there in terms of my favorites from the band, and of course my rating for this is a 5 out of 5. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments section down below. Please drop a like on the review, and of course, let me know other throwback reviews that you'd like to see me do in the future. Please tap the top link down below or else the annotation in the corner if you're able to support the channel on Patreon. It helps the videos keep coming on both of my channels on a monthly basis. If you want to see that album covers video I talked about, then tap right over here, or see another Panic at the Disco review right over here. All of my social media accounts, including Twitch, can be found linked below, and I'll see you soon for more on ARTV.